The Carter house in rural Ohio was buzzing with life. It was Thanksgiving, and the whole family was coming together to celebrate not just the holiday, but also Harold and Margaret Carter's 30th wedding anniversary. The old two-story house, with its white porch and flower boxes full of yellow chrysanthemums, felt like the heart of the family. It was the kind of place where memories were made, kids running through the sprinklers in summer, Christmas lights twinkling in winter. Today, it was decked out for a feast. Margaret, 62, was in the kitchen, her silver hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was kneading dough for cornbread, her hands moving like they'd done this 1,000 times. Every now and then, she'd wipe her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of flour. "Harold, you checked that turkey yet?" she called out, her voice warm but tired. Harold, her husband, was poking at the oven. At 65, he was a tall man with a stern face but soft eyes. He'd spent years as a high school principal, and even now, retired, he carried that air of authority. "It's golden, Maggie," he said, closing the oven door. "Gonna be the best one yet." He shot her a grin, the kind that still made her blush after all these years. Their oldest son, James, 38, walked in, holding a bottle of red wine. He was a lawyer in Columbus, always dressed sharp, with a smile that could charm anyone. But today his jaw was tight, like he was carrying something heavy. "Need a hand, Mom?" he asked, setting the wine on the counter. "Nah, you go mingle," Margaret said, waving him off. "Your cousins are starting to roll in." James nodded, but his eyes flicked toward the window. Outside, a black SUV pulled up, and Emily stepped out. She was 34, with curly brown hair and a red sweater that made her stand out against the gray November sky. Emily was married to Michael, James's cousin, and she ran her own interior design business. She had this artsy vibe, always full of ideas. As she grabbed a pie from the back seat, her eyes met James's through the window for a split second. Neither of them smiled. Michael, Emily's husband, was unloading bags from the SUV. He was 36, a construction engineer with a no-nonsense attitude. He waved at Harold, who'd stepped onto the porch to greet them. "Hope you're ready for my famous pumpkin pie, Uncle Harold," Michael called, his laugh booming. Inside, Tom, the Carters' youngest son, bounded into the kitchen. At 25, he was a free spirit, fresh out of college with no real plan. His messy blonde hair and goofy grin made him the family's unofficial comedian. "Yo, Emily's here," he announced, stealing a piece of cornbread from the counter. "She looks like she walked out of a holiday catalog." Margaret swatted his hand. "Tom, behave. And don't ruin my cornbread." The house filled up fast. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and kids poured in, each bringing a dish or a story. The living room was a sea of noise, kids chasing each other, adults catching up over beers. Aunt Susan, Margaret's sister, was showing off photos of her new grandbaby. Uncle David, Harold's brother, was arguing about football with Michael. It was chaos, but the good kind, the kind that made you feel like you belonged. As the afternoon wore on, Margaret set the dining room table. It was a big oak thing, passed down from her grandmother, and it groaned under the weight of the feast. A golden turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and enough pies to feed an army. She lit candles, their soft glow making the room feel cozy. "Harold, call everyone in," she shouted. The family crowded around the table, squeezing into chairs and pulling up extras from the garage. Harold stood at the head, raising a glass of wine. "To 30 years with my Maggie," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And to all of you, for making this family what it is." Everyone cheered, glasses clinking. James sat across from Emily, his fingers tapping nervously on his glass. Michael, next to Emily, slung an arm around her, oblivious to the tension. Tom, at the kids' end of the table, was making faces to get his little cousins to laugh. For a moment, it felt perfect, the kind of Thanksgiving you'd see in a movie. But perfection, as the Carters were about to learn, never lasts. Dinner was in full swing when Tom started telling a story. He was halfway through a piece of cornbread, talking with his mouth full. "As usual. So, I was driving through this tiny town near Columbus a couple months back," he said, waving his fork. "Got totally lost, right? But then I see this cute little coffee shop. And guess who's there? James and Emily, looking all cozy. He laughed, expecting everyone to join in. But the room went quiet. Forks stopped moving. Michael's hand froze on his glass. "What did you say, Tom?" he asked, his voice low. Tom, clueless, kept going. "Yeah, they were like deep in conversation. Looked like a date or something." He chuckled, then noticed the looks around the table. "What?" "It was just coffee." Michael turned to Emily, his face hard. "Coffee? In some random town an hour away? When was this?" Emily's cheeks flushed. She set her napkin down, her hands shaking. "It was nothing, Michael. Just a quick meeting." James needed advice on redecorating his office. James stared at his plate, his knuckles white around his fork. Margaret, sensing trouble, tried to steer things back. "Hey, let's not get sidetracked. Pass the potatoes, Tom." But Michael wasn't letting it go. "A meeting? Why didn't you tell me? And why's James acting like he's got something to hide?" Harold cleared his throat. "Michael, let's keep this civil." "James, you got anything to say?" James looked up, his eyes darting to Emily, then back to his dad. "It was just coffee," he said, but his voice was too flat, too rehearsed. Emily pushed her chair back, her eyes glistening. "Okay, fine," she said, her voice breaking. "It wasn't just coffee. Michael, I'm sorry. We messed up." The room felt like it had been sucked dry of air. Michael stood, his chair scraping the floor. "Messed up?" he roared. "You're telling me you've been sneaking around with my cousin?" "My cousin?" Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Harold's face darkened, his eyes locked on James. The kids at the table went quiet, sensing something bad. Aunt Susan whispered, "Oh, Lord," while Uncle David shook his head. James stood, holding up his hands. "Michael, listen. It's not what you think. Not what I think." Michael cut him off, stepping closer. "You got a wife, James. Kids. And you're running around with my wife?" Tom, realizing he'd lit a match, stammered, "Guys, I didn't mean to." "Shut up, Tom." Michael snapped, his fists clenched. Emily was crying now, her hands covering her face. "I'm so sorry, Michael. It was a mistake. We didn't mean for it to happen." Margaret stood, her voice shaking. "Enough. This is my house, and I won't have it torn apart. Everyone sit down. Now." But the damage was done. The perfect Thanksgiving, the perfect family, was cracking right down the middle. The dining room was a war zone, and not the kind you could clean up with a broom. Plates of half-eaten turkey and mashed potatoes sat forgotten as the Carter family reeled from Emily's confession. Michael's face was red, his fist balled up like he was ready to swing. James stood across from him, looking like a deer caught in headlights. Margaret was still on her feet, her hands trembling as she tried to hold the family together. Harold's stern gaze swept the room, but even he couldn't hide the hurt in his eyes. The kids, wide-eyed, clung to their parents, while aunts and uncles whispered in shock. "Everybody just calm down," Margaret pleaded, her voice cracking. "We're family. We don't scream at each other like this." "Family," Michael spat, glaring at James. "This guy's no family to me. Not after what he did." He turned to Emily, who was sobbing into her hands. "And you, how long, Emily? How long you been lying to my face?" Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "A few months," she whispered. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We got too close. Too close." Michael laughed, but it was bitter, like he'd been punched in the gut. "You're my wife, and he's my cousin. You don't just get too close behind my back." James took a step forward, his voice low. "Michael, I swear, we didn't plan this. It was a mistake. I am sorry." "Sorry?" Michael lunged, and if Uncle David hadn't grabbed his arm, he might have landed a punch. "You don't get to say sorry and make this go away. James, you've got a wife. Kids. What's Lisa going to say when she hears about this?" At the mention of Lisa, James flinched. Lisa, his wife of 12 years, was at home in Columbus with their 2 kids, recovering from the flu. She'd begged off the reunion, promising to join for Christmas instead. James hadn't told her about Emily. He hadn't told anyone. Until now. Harold slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses rattle. "That's enough." His voice boomed, the kind of tone that used to silence a room full of rowdy teenagers. "Michael, sit down. James, you too. We're not animals. We talked this out. Michael shook off Uncle David's grip, but didn't sit. Talk. What's there to talk about? They stabbed me in the back. Both of them. He pointed at Emily. You're coming with me. We're leaving. Emily looked up, her face streaked with mascara. Michael, please, let's just... Now! Michael roared, and she flinched. Margaret stepped between them, her eyes blazing. Michael, you're not dragging her out of here like this. And James, you're not slinking off either. We're dealing with this right now, as a family. Tom, who'd been frozen in his seat, finally spoke up. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was like that. I thought it was just coffee. His voice was small, like a kid who'd broken something valuable. Margaret softened, reaching for his hand. It's not your fault, Tom. You didn't do this. She shot a look at James and Emily. They did. The room stayed tense, like a rubber band stretched too tight. Aunt Susan, always the peacemaker, tried to lighten the mood. Look, maybe we're all just tired and emotional. Let's take a breather, eat some pie and... Pie? Michael snapped. You think pie's gonna fix this, Susan? My wife's been cheating on me with my cousin. Susan shrank back, and Uncle David muttered, Jesus, Michael, ease up. Harold raised a hand. David, stay out of it. Michael's got a right to be mad. He turned to James, his voice steady but cold. Son, you've got some explaining to do. Start talking. James ran a hand through his hair, his perfect lawyer composure gone. I don't know where to start, Dad. Things with Lisa, they've been bad for a while. We fight all the time about money, the kids, everything. I was drowning. And then I met Emily at this work thing, and we just clicked. Clicked. Michael growled. You make it sound like a damn rom-com. You slept with my wife, James. It wasn't like that. James shot back, his voice rising for the first time. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. It just happened. Emily nodded, her voice barely audible. Michael, you're always gone. Work, projects, weekend away. I felt invisible. James! He listened to me. He saw me. Michael's jaw tightened, and for a second, it looked like he might cry. So this is my fault? I'm out there busting my ass to provide for us, and you're off playing house with him? No, it's not your fault, Emily said quickly. It's mine. I should have talked to you. I should have tried harder. I'm so sorry. Margaret wiped her eyes, her voice shaking. You two have no idea what you've done. This isn't just about you. It's about this whole family. Your kids. Michael's trust, Lisa's heart. How are we supposed to move forward from this? The kids' table was quiet now, the older ones whispering to each other, trying to figure out what was going on. One of the younger cousins, a 6-year-old named Ellie, tugged at Aunt Susan's sleeve. Why is everybody yelling? She asked, her voice trembling. Susan hugged her close. It's just grown-up stuff. Sweetie, don't worry. But Ellie's question hung in the air, a reminder of how far the damage could spread. Harold took a deep breath, his hands gripping the back of his chair. Here's what's going to happen, he said. Michael, you and Emily need space. Take a walk, cool off. James, you're staying right here. We're not done talking. Michael shook his head. I'm not staying in this house another minute. He grabbed his coat from the rack by the door. Emily, you coming, or you staying with your boyfriend? Emily stood, her legs shaky. Michael, please. Don't do this. But he was already halfway out the door. She grabbed her purse and followed, her sobs echoing as the screen door slammed shut. The room felt emptier without them. But the tension didn't go anywhere. Margaret sank into her chair, her face buried in her hands. 30 years, she whispered. 30 years we've built this family, and now it's falling apart. Harold put a hand on her shoulder, but his eyes were on James. You've got a lot to answer for, son. Starting with why you thought this was okay. James sat down, his head in his hands. I didn't think it would come to this, he said, his voice muffled. I thought we could keep it quiet. I don't know what I thought. Tom, still reeling, stood up. I'm going to go check on Michael, he said, grabbing his jacket. This is my fault. I got to fix it. It's not your fault, Harold said firmly. But go. Make sure he's okay. As Tom headed out, the rest of the family started to fracture. Some, like Aunt Susan, stayed to comfort Margaret. Others, like Uncle David, began clearing plates, as if cleaning up could erase what had happened. The kids were shuffled to the living room, where someone put on a cartoon to keep them distracted. James stayed at the table, alone with his parents. Margaret looked at him, her eyes full of pain. How could you do this, James? To Lisa, to your kids, to us? I don't know, Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I was lost. Lisa and we haven't been happy in years. I know that's no excuse, but it's the truth. Harold leaned forward, his voice low. You're right. It's no excuse. You made a choice, and now we're all paying for it. So what are you going to do about it? James didn't have an answer. Outside, the November wind howled, carrying the sound of Michael's truck peeling out of the driveway. Emily was with him, but whether they were talking or fighting, no one knew. Back in the house, the Carter family sat in the wreckage of their Thanksgiving. The candles on the table flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. It was supposed to be a day of gratitude, of love. Instead, it was the day everything changed. The Carter house felt like it was holding its breath. The dining room, once warm with laughter and the smell of turkey, now seemed cold and hollow. Margaret sat at the table, her hands clasped tightly, staring at the flickering candles. Harold stood behind her, his face a mix of anger and heartbreak. James was slumped in a chair, his head bowed, like he was waiting for a verdict. The rest of the family had scattered, some to the living room to watch the kids, others to the kitchen to clean up, as if scrubbing dishes could scrub away the mess they were all in. Outside, Tom jogged down the gravel driveway, his breath puffing in the chilly November air. Michael's truck was gone, but he spotted tire marks in the dirt, heading toward the main road. He pulled out his phone and texted Michael. Hey man, you okay? I'm so sorry. Didn't mean to blow everything up. No reply. He shoved his hands in his pockets and started walking toward the old oak tree at the edge of the property, where he and Michael used to climb as kids. Maybe Michael had gone there to cool off. Back inside, Harold finally spoke, his voice low and steady. James, you need to start talking. Not excuses. The truth. What the hell were you thinking? James looked up, his eyes red. I wasn't thinking, Dad. That's the problem. Lisa and we've been falling apart for years. We don't talk anymore. We just fight or ignore each other. I was miserable, and I didn't know how to fix it. Margaret's voice was sharp, cutting through the air. So you fix it by cheating? With your cousin's wife? James, you've got 2 kids. Did you even think about them? James flinched, like her words were slap. I know, Mom. I know I screwed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Emily and it started as just talking. She was going through stuff with Michael. I was a mess with Lisa. We got each other. Got each other? Harold said, his tone heavy with disbelief. You're not teenagers sneaking around. You're a grown man, James. You made vows. You had responsibilities. I know, James said, his voice breaking. I kept telling myself I'd end it, that it was just a fling. But every time I tried, I couldn't. I felt alive with her, like I wasn't just going through the motions. Margaret shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. You felt alive? What about Lisa? What about Michael? What about this family? You tore us apart, James. For what? A feeling? James didn't answer. He just stared at the table, his hands trembling. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the distant sound of the TV in the living room, where the kids were watching cartoons to escape the chaos. In the kitchen, Aunt Susan and Uncle David were washing dishes, their voices hushed but tense. I can't believe James would do this, Susan whispered, scrubbing a plate harder than necessary. He's always been the golden boy. Perfect job, perfect family. And now this. David shook his head, drying a glass. People aren't perfect, Susan. Marriage is hard. I'm not saying what he did was right, but Lisa's no saint either. She's been checked out for years. Always working, always stressed. Maybe James felt trapped. Susan glared at him. Don't you dare defend him, David. He cheated. With Emily, of all people. Poor Michael. He doesn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this, David said quietly. But it's not black and white. You know that. Their conversation was cut short when Ellie, the 6-year-old cousin, wandered in, clutching a stuffed bunny. Aunt Susan, is Mommy mad at Daddy? She asked, her big eyes full of worry. Susan knelt down, forcing a smile. Oh, sweetie, nobody's mad. They're just talking grown-up stuff. Why don't you go draw a picture for Grandma Margaret? She'd love that. Ellie nodded and shuffled off, but her question lingered. The kids were catching on, and that made everything worse. Susan looked at David, her voice barely above a whisper. This is going to scar them, isn't it? David didn't answer. He just kept drying dishes, his jaw tight. Meanwhile, Tom had reached the oak tree, but Michael wasn't there. The wind rustled the bare branches, and Tom shivered, pulling his jacket tighter. He tried calling Michael, but it went straight to voicemail. Come on, man, he muttered, pacing. Don't do anything stupid. He thought back to the moment he'd opened his big mouth at dinner. It was supposed to be a funny story, something to make everyone laugh. How was he supposed to know James and Emily were hiding something like that? Tom kicked a rock, frustrated with himself. He'd always been the screw-up, the kid who spoke before he thought. Now he'd lit a match and burned the whole family down. He texted Michael again. Please, just tell me you're okay. I'm an idiot. Let me make this right. Still no reply. Tom sighed and started walking back to the house, his stomach churning. He didn't know how to fix this, but he had to try. Back in the dining room, Harold sat down across from James, his hands folded. You need to call Lisa, he said. She deserves to hear this from you, not from someone else. James's face went pale. Dad, I can't. Not yet. She's sick and the kids. I don't know how to tell her. You don't have a choice, Harold said. You made this mess. You clean it up, and you start by being honest. Margaret wiped her eyes. Her voice softer now. James, I know you're hurting. I know marriage isn't easy, but you had options. You could have talked to us, to a counselor, to Lisa. Why didn't you? James leaned back, his eyes distant. I try, Mom. I tried talking to Lisa, but she just shut down or get mad. I suggested counseling once, and she laughed it off. Said we didn't need it. I felt like I was screaming into a void. So you gave up? Margaret asked. You gave up on your family and ran to Emily? It wasn't like that, James said, his voice hoarse. She was there. She listened. She didn't judge me. For the first time in years, I felt like someone cared. Harold shook his head. That's not love, James. That's running away. And now you've dragged Michael and Emily's marriage into it. You've got to own that. James nodded, but he looked like a man drowning. I know. I don't know how to face Lisa. Or the kids. They're going to hate me. They might, Harold said bluntly. But you don't get to hide from this. You're their father. Act like it. Outside. Michael's truck was parked at a gas station a few miles away. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her arms crossed, staring out the window. Michael gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Neither of them had spoken since they left the house. Finally, Emily broke the silence. Michael, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I mean it. I never wanted to hurt you. Michael didn't look at her. Then why'd you do it, Em? Why him? Of all the people in the world, why my cousin? Emily's voice trembled. I don't know. It wasn't planned. We were working on that project together, and we started talking. Just talking at first. About work, then about life. You were always gone, Michael. I felt so alone. So this is my fault? Michael's voice rose, his eyes flashing. I'm out there working 60-hour weeks to keep a roof over our heads. And you're blaming me? No, Emily said quickly. It's not your fault. It's mine. I should have told you how I was feeling. I should have fought for us. But I didn't. I was weak, and I'm sorry. Michael shook his head, his voice breaking. I trusted you, Em. I trusted him. And you both lied to me. How am I supposed to live with that? Emily reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I don't know, she whispered. But I want to try. I want to fix this if you'll let me. Michael stared out the windshield, his jaw tight. I don't know if I can, he said. Not after this. They sat in silence, the hum of the gas station's neon sign filling the space between them. Back at the Carter house, the family was picking up the pieces, but the cracks were spreading. Thanksgiving was supposed to bring them together. Instead, it was tearing them apart. The Carter house was quieter now, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that follows a storm, when everyone's too shell-shocked to speak. The dining room table, still cluttered with half-eaten plates, looked like a crime scene. Margaret sat with her hands folded, staring at the flickering candles as if they could somehow fix things. Harold stood by the window, watching the driveway, hoping Tom would come back with news about Michael. James was still at the table, his face pale, like he was waiting for the world to crash down. In the living room, Aunt Susan was trying to keep the kids distracted with a board game, but even she couldn't hide her worry. The older kids, like 10-year-old Ben, Michael's nephew, kept asking questions. Why is Uncle Michael so mad? Ben whispered, rolling a die without looking at it. Susan forced a smile. He's just upset about grown-up stuff, honey. It'll be okay. But her voice wavered, and Ben didn't look convinced. He went back to the game, but his heart wasn't in it. In the kitchen, Uncle David and a few other relatives were cleaning up, their movements slow and mechanical. "This is a damn mess," David muttered, stacking plates in the sink. James always acted like he had it all together. Now look at us. Cousin Laura, Michael's sister, was wiping down the counter, her lips pressed tight. "Don't put this all on James," she said. "Emily's just as guilty. She's the one married to Michael. She should have known better." David shrugged. "Takes two to tango, Laura. They're both to blame. And Michael's going to carry this for a long time." Laura's eyes narrowed. "You think I don't know that? He's my brother. I've never seen him this hurt. Not even when Dad died." Their conversation trailed off as Margaret walked in, her face drawn. "Any word from Tom?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David shook his head. "Not yet. He's probably still looking for Michael." Margaret nodded, but her hands were trembling. "I need to do something," she said, grabbing a sponge. "I can't just sit here." Laura put a hand on her arm. "Aunt Margaret, you don't have to clean. We got this. Go sit with Uncle Harold. Or talk to James." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Talk to him? I don't even know who he is right now. My own son, and he's a stranger." Laura hugged her, and for a moment, Margaret let herself cry. But only for a moment. She pulled back, wiped her eyes, and started scrubbing a pan, as if she could scrub away the pain. Outside, Tom was walking along the road, his phone pressed to his ear. He'd left another voicemail for Michael. "Hey, it's me again. I'm walking toward town. Just let me know you're okay, man. I feel like crap for this. Please call me back." He hung up, shoving the phone in his pocket. The cold bit at his fingers, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was the look on Michael's face when Emily confessed, like someone had ripped his heart out. Tom had always looked up to Michael. Growing up, Michael was the cool cousin, the one who taught him how to throw a football, who snuck him his first beer at 16. They'd stayed close, even as adults, texting about sports or grabbing a beer when Michael was in town. Now, Tom wondered if Michael would ever speak to him again. He reached the gas station where Michael's truck had been parked earlier, but it was gone. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the empty lot. Tom sighed, kicking a pebble across the pavement. "Stupid," he muttered to himself. "Why'd I have to open my big mouth?" He thought about heading back to the house, but the idea of facing everyone made his stomach twist. Instead, he sat on a bench outside the gas station, staring at the road. He didn't know what to do, but he couldn't give up on Michael. Not yet. Back at the house, Harold sat down across from James, his eyes hard but not unkind. "You can't keep dodging this, son," he said. "You gotta call Lisa. Tonight. She needs to hear it from you." James shook his head, his voice barely audible. "I can't, Dad. She's already sick. If I tell her now, it'll destroy her. And the kids. God, what am I supposed to say to them?" Harold leaned forward, his hands clasped. "You tell them the truth. You tell them you made a mistake. And you're going to do whatever it takes to make it right. That's what a man does, James." He faces his mess. James's eyes welled up. "What if she leaves me? What if the kids hate me?" "Then you deal with it," Harold said, his voice firm. "You don't get to run from this. You broke something, and now you've got to put it back together, starting with Lisa." Margaret walked back into the dining room, her apron still on. She looked at James, her face a mix of anger and sorrow. "Do you even love her anymore?" she asked. "Lisa, your wife. Do you still love her?" James hesitated, and that pause said more than words could. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice raw. "I care about her. She's the mother of my kids. But love, I don't know if we've had that for a long time." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, like he'd slapped her. "How do we get here?" she whispered. "How did my boy turn into this?" Harold put a hand on her shoulder, but his eyes stayed on James. "You're going to call her," he said, "and you're going to tell her everything. If you don't, someone else will, and that'll be worse." James nodded, but he looked like a man walking to his execution. He pulled out his phone, staring at Lisa's name in his contacts. His thumb hovered over the call button, but he couldn't bring himself to press it. Not yet. Meanwhile, Michael and Emily were parked at a rest stop a few miles down the highway. The truck's engine was off, and the silence between them was deafening. Emily had stopped crying, but her face was puffy, her eyes red. Michael stared out the windshield, his hands still on the wheel, like he was ready to drive off a cliff. "I don't know what you wanted to say," Emily said finally, her voice hoarse. "I've said I'm sorry. I've said it was a mistake. What else can I do?" Michael's voice was low, almost a growl. "You could tell me why. Why him? Why James? Was I that bad of a husband?" Emily shook her head, her hands twisting in her lap. "You weren't a bad husband. Michael, you were just gone. Always working, always stressed. I felt like I was living with a ghost. I tried to talk to you, but you'd brush me off or say you were too tired. So you went to James?" Michael's voice cracked. "My own cousin? You couldn't find anyone else to talk to?" Emily's eyes filled with tears again. "It wasn't about him being your cousin. It was about him being there. He listened. He made me feel like I mattered." Michael laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "And I didn't? I was out there killing myself to build a life for us. And you're telling me I didn't make you feel like you mattered?" "I'm not saying that," Emily said, her voice pleading. "I'm saying I was lonely, and I was weak, and I made a terrible choice. But I don't want to lose you, Michael. I want to fix this." Michael turned to her, his eyes burning. "Fix it? You think you can just say sorry and we go back to normal? Every time I look at you, I'm going to see you with him. Every time I see James, I'm going to want to put my fist through his face. How do we fix that?" Emily didn't have an answer. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, his face a mask of pain. "I need time," he said. "I can't do this right now." He started the truck, the engine rumbling to life. "We're going home," he said, "but don't think this is over. I don't know what happens next, but I know I can't trust you anymore." Emily nodded, her heart breaking. As they pulled onto the highway, she stared out the window, wondering if their marriage was already gone. Back at the house, the night was settling in. The candles had burned low, and the air felt heavy. James still hadn't called Lisa, but he knew he couldn't put it off forever. Tom was still out looking for Michael, carrying the weight of his mistake. Margaret and Harold were holding on to each other, trying to keep the family from falling apart. But the truth was the Carters were fractured, and as the stars came out over the Ohio sky, they all wondered the same thing. Could they ever be whole again? The Carter house was dark now, except for the glow of the dining room candles and a few lamps in the living room. It was past 9, and most of the family had either gone home or retreated to guest rooms upstairs. The kids were finally asleep, sprawled on couches with blankets, the TV playing a loop of holiday cartoons. Margaret sat at the kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee in front of her, staring at nothing. Harold was in the living room, flipping through an old photo album, as if the past could anchor him to something solid. James was still in the dining room, his phone in his hand, Lisa's name glowing on the screen. He hadn't called her yet, and the weight of that decision was crushing him. Tom trudged back up the driveway, his boots crunching on the gravel. He'd spent hours wandering, checking every spot he thought Michael might go, the gas station, the old oak tree, even the dive bar on the edge of town. No sign of him. His phone was still silent. No replies to Tom's texts or voicemails. Tom's shoulders sagged as he pushed open the front door, the warmth of the house doing little to ease the chill in his chest. Margaret looked up as he stepped into the kitchen. "Any luck?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. Tom shook his head, slumping into a chair. "Nothing. His truck's gone. I tried calling, texting, everything. He shut me out, Mom." Margaret reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "He's not shutting you out, Tom. He's hurting. Give him time." Tom pulled his hand away, rubbing his face. "This is my fault. If I hadn't opened my stupid mouth, none of this would have happened. Michael wouldn't be out there. Emily wouldn't be crying. And James," he trailed off, glancing toward the dining room. "I messed everything up." Margaret's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "You didn't make James and Emily do what they did. They made those choices. You just brought it to light. And maybe that's a good thing in the long run. Secrets like that, they fester, Tom didn't look convinced. Yeah, but I didn't have to blurt it out in front of everybody. I should have talked to James first or Michael. I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot, Margaret said. You're young, and you're human. We all make mistakes. The question is, what are you going to do now? Tom shrugged, his eyes fixed on the table. I don't know. Find Michael, I guess. Apologize until he listens. Margaret nodded. That's a start. But don't carry this alone, okay? We're all in this together. Tom gave a small nod, but the guilt was still heavy. He grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and headed upstairs. Needing to be alone, as he passed the dining room, he avoided looking at James. He couldn't face his brother right now, not after everything. In the dining room, James was still staring at his phone. Harold walked in, the photo album tucked under his arm. He sat down across from James, his face unreadable. You call her yet? He asked. James shook his head, his voice barely audible. I can't. Dad, I keep trying, but every time I think about what to say, I freeze. How do I tell her I betrayed her? That I blew up our family? Harold set the album on the table, opening it to a page with a photo of James and Lisa's wedding. They were young, smiling, Lisa in a white dress, James in a tux, their hands intertwined. You remember this day? Harold asked. You stood up in front of everyone and promised to love her, no matter what. You're breaking that promise, James. But you can still honor it by being honest. James looked at the photo, his throat tight. I don't even know if she'll listen. She's been so distant lately. We barely talk unless it's about the kids or bills. I don't know if she loves me anymore. Harold's voice was steady but firm. That's no excuse for what you did. If things were bad, you should have fought for your marriage, not run to someone else. But you can't change the past. You can only deal with the now. And right now, Lisa deserves the truth. James nodded, his fingers trembling as he picked up the phone. He hit the call button before he could talk himself out of it. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then Lisa's voice, tired and congested, came through. James? It's late. Everything okay? James's heart pounded. Lisa, we need to talk. It's important. There was a pause, then a rustle like she was sitting up in bed. What's wrong? Is it the kids? Your parents? No, they're fine, James said, his voice shaking. It's about me. I did something terrible. I need to tell you in person, but I can't wait. I messed up, Lisa. I cheated on you. The line went silent. James could hear her breathing, sharp and uneven. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold. What did you say? I had an affair, James said, the words spilling out. With Emily, Michael's wife. It's been going on for a few months. I'm so sorry, Lisa. I didn't mean for it to happen. Another silence, longer this time. Then Lisa's voice, barely a whisper. You're serious? You're telling me you've been sleeping with your cousin's wife? Yes, James said, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it, but I'm telling you because you deserve to know. Lisa laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Deserve to know? James, you've been lying to me for months. To our kids. And now you think saying sorry makes it okay? Who are you? I don't know, James admitted. I'm trying to figure that out. I want to fix this, Lisa. For you, for the kids. Don't you dare bring the kids into this, she snapped. You don't get to use them as an excuse. I can't do this right now. The line went dead. James stared at the phone, his chest heaving. Harold reached across the table, his hand resting on James's arm. You did the right thing, he said. It hurts, but it was the right thing. James shook his head, his voice broken. She hates me, Dad. I've lost her. You don't know that yet, Harold said. But you've got to give her time, and you got to keep showing up, no matter how hard it gets. Meanwhile, Michael and Emily were back at their house in Dayton, an hour's drive from the Carter farm. The living room was dark, the only light coming from a street lamp outside. Emily sat on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, while Michael paced, his boots heavy on the hardwood floor. I still can't wrap my head around it, Michael said, his voice raw. You and James. Every time I close my eyes, I see you two together, laughing behind my back, making a fool out of me. Emily wiped her eyes, her voice soft. It wasn't like that, Michael. We weren't laughing at you. We were both lost. I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth. Michael stopped pacing, turning to face her. The truth? You want to talk about the truth? The truth is, I loved you. I trusted you. And you threw it all away for him. Why, Emily? What did he give you that I couldn't? Emily's voice trembled. He gave me time. Attention. You were always working, Michael. I'd go days without really talking to you. I felt like I was disappearing. Michael's face twisted with pain. So you're saying I drove you to this? I was working to build a future for us, Emily. For the kids we talked about having someday. And you're telling me that wasn't enough? It wasn't about enough, Emily said, standing now. It was about feeling seen. I tried to tell you, Michael. I tried to say I was lonely. But you just say, I'm doing my best. I needed more than that. Michael shook his head, his voice breaking. And you think I didn't? You think I wasn't lonely too? But I didn't run off and cheat. I stayed. I fought for us. Emily's tears fell faster. I know. And I failed you. I failed us. But I don't want to give up, Michael. I want to try again, if you'll let me. Michael looked at her, his eyes full of hurt and anger. I don't know if I can, he said. I look at you, and all I see is betrayal. I don't know how to get past that. He grabbed his keys from the counter. I'm sleeping in motel tonight. I need space. Emily reached for him, but he was already out the door. The sound of his truck starting up echoed in the quiet night, leaving Emily alone with her guilt. Back at the Carter house, the night dragged on. James sat alone in the dining room, the phone still in his hand. Margaret and Harold were in the kitchen, talking in low voices about what came next. Tom was upstairs, staring at the ceiling, replaying the dinner in his head. The family was scattered, each carrying their own piece of the pain. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, they all wondered how they'd ever find their way back to each other. The Carter house was silent as midnight crept in, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like it's pressing down on you. The dining room candles had burned out, leaving only the faint smell of wax. James was still at the table, his phone dark now after his call with Lisa. Her words, sharp, cold, final, echoed in his head. He'd expected anger, but the silence after she hung up was worse. It was like she'd already given up on him. Margaret and Harold were in the kitchen, sitting across from each other with mugs of tea that had gone cold. They hadn't spoken much since James's call to Lisa. Margaret's eyes were puffy, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. Harold stared at the table, his jaw tight, like he was wrestling with something he couldn't say. We raised him better than this, Margaret said finally, her voice low. How'd he get so lost, Harold? Where were we when he needed us? Harold reached for her hand, his grip steady. We did our best, Maggie. Kids grow up, make their own choices. We can't carry their mistakes. But he's our son, she said, her voice breaking. I keep thinking maybe if I'd noticed he was struggling, if I'd asked more questions, maybe I could have stopped this. Harold shook his head. You can't take this on yourself. James is a grown man. He knew what he was doing. So did Emily. They chose this, not you. Margaret wiped her eyes, nodding, but the guilt lingered. She'd always been the glue of the family, the one who fixed fights and planned reunions. Now, with everything falling apart, she felt like she'd failed. Upstairs, Tom lay on his old twin bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling from when he was a kid. His phone was on a nightstand, still no reply from Michael. He kept replaying the dinner in his head, his dumb joke about James and Emily, the way Michael's face changed, the way everything spiraled. He wanted to fix it, but he didn't know how. He wasn't the smart one like James or the steady one like Michael. He was just Tom, the guy who always messed things up. He grabbed his phone and typed another text to Michael. I know you're mad. And I don't blame you. I'm sorry I said anything. Just let me know you're safe. He hit send, then tossed the phone onto the bed, rubbing his eyes. He needed to do something, anything, to make this right. In Dayton, Michael was checked into a cheap motel off the highway. The room smelled like stale cigarettes, and the bed creaked every time he moved. He sat on the edge, his elbows on his knees, staring at the worn carpet. His phone buzzed with Tom's latest text, but he didn't open it. He wasn't ready to talk. Not to Tom, not to anyone. All he could think about was Emily's face when she admitted the affair, the way her voice shook, like she was sorry, but not sorry enough. He'd loved her since college, when they met at a campus coffee shop. She'd spilled her latte on his shoes, laughed, and offered to buy him a new pair. That was Emily, bright, clumsy, full of life. He thought they'd grow old together, maybe have a couple of kids, a house with a big backyard. Now, that future felt like a lie. He pulled out his wallet, flipping to a photo of them from their honeymoon in Florida. They were on the beach, Emily's hair tangled from the wind, both of them grinning like nothing could touch them. He traced her face with his thumb, his chest aching. How did they get from there to here? His phone buzzed again, this time a call from his sister, Laura. He let it go to voicemail. But her message came through a minute later. Michael, it's me. I know you're hurting. Just call me, okay? I'm here. He listened to it twice, then set the phone down. He wasn't ready to talk to Laura either. She wanted to fix things, and right now, he didn't know if anything could be fixed. Back at the Carter house, James finally stood, his legs stiff from sitting so long. He walked to the living room, where Harold was still looking at the photo album. The sight of it, pictures of happier times, made James's stomach twist. Dad, I'm gonna head out, he said, his voice rough. I need to get home, talk to Lisa in person. Harold looked up, his eyes searching James's face. You sure you're ready for that? No, James admitted, but I don't have a choice. I can't let her sit with this alone. Harold nodded, closing the album. Good. Face ahead on. That's the only way. James grabbed his coat, pausing at the door. I'm sorry, Dad, for letting you and Mom down. Harold's face softened, just a fraction. We're hurt, son, but we're still your parents. We'll get through this. Just don't make it worse. James nodded, stepping out into the cold. The drive to Columbus was an hour, and he dreaded every mile. He didn't know what he'd say to Lisa or how she'd look at him. All he knew was that he'd broken something precious, and he had to try to make it right. In the kitchen, Margaret was cleaning again, wiping down counters that were already spotless. Harold walked in, setting the photo album on the table. You need to stop, Maggie, he said gently. You're going to wear yourself out. I can't stop, she said, her voice tight. If I stop, I'll start thinking, and I can't handle that right now. Harold pulled her into a hug, his arms strong despite his age. We're going to be okay, he said. It's a mess, but we've been through messes before. We'll figure it out. Margaret buried her face in his chest, her voice muffled. I just want my family back, Harold, the way it was. I know, he said, stroking her hair, but maybe it wasn't as perfect as we thought. Maybe this is a chance to make it stronger. She pulled back, looking up at him. You really believe that? I have to, he said. Otherwise, what's the point? They stood there for a while, holding each other, the only sound the ticking of the kitchen clock. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. In Dayton, Emily was still on the couch, the house feeling too big without Michael. She tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She didn't blame him for needing space, but the silence was killing her. She kept thinking about the moment she'd confessed, the way Michael's face crumpled, like she'd taken everything he believed in and crushed it. She walked to the bedroom, pulling out a box from under the bed. Inside were letters, photos, little mementos from their early years together. A ticket stub from their first date. A note Michael had written her during a fight, promising he'd always love her. She held the note, her fingers tracing his messy handwriting, and started to cry again. She meant it when she said she wanted to fix things, but she didn't know how. Could you rebuild trust after breaking it so badly? She thought about calling her mom or her best friend, but she was too ashamed. This was her mess, and she had to face it. She grabbed her phone and texted Michael. I know you need space, and I'll give it to you. But I love you, and I'm not giving up on us. I'll wait as long as it takes. She hit send, then set the phone down, hoping he'd read it. Back at the Carter house, Tom couldn't sleep. He got up, grabbed his jacket, and slipped out the back door. The night was cold, the stars sharp against the black sky. He walked to the old oak tree, the one he and Michael used to climb, and sat at its base, his back against the rough bark. I'm sorry, man, he whispered, like Michael could hear him. I didn't mean to hurt you. He thought about the family, James's guilt, Margaret's tears, Harold's quiet strength. They were all hurting, all trying to find a way forward. Tom didn't know if he could help, but he knew he had to try. He pulled out his phone and sent one last text to Michael. I'm not giving up on you. You're my brother. Always will be. Then he stood, brushing the dirt off his jeans, and headed back to the house. The Carter family was broken, but they weren't done. As the night stretched on, each of them faced their own truths, their own regrets. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The first light of dawn crept through the Carter house, painting the kitchen in soft grays. Margaret was up early as always, brewing coffee and setting out leftovers from the ruined Thanksgiving feast. The house was still, the kind of quiet that follows a long night of tears and hard truths. She moved slowly, her hands steady but her heart heavy. The family was broken, and she didn't know if she had the strength to put it back together. Harold shuffled in, his flannel shirt wrinkled from sleeping in it. He kissed her forehead, a small gesture that felt like an anchor in the storm. "You sleep at all?" he asked, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Not much," Margaret admitted, stirring sugar into her mug. Kept thinking about James, and Michael, and Lisa, all of them. Harold nodded, sitting across from her. "It's a mess, Maggie, but we've been through messes before. We'll get through this one." Margaret gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I hope so. I don't know how to look at James the same way. He's my boy, but he's done something so wrong." Harold took her hand, his grip warm and firm. "He's still our boy. He's lost, but he's not gone. We've got to help him find his way back." Upstairs, Tom was awake, sitting on the edge of his bed. His phone was still silent. No replies from Michael. He'd spent the night tossing and turning, replaying every moment of the dinner, every word he'd said. He felt like a kid again, the screw-up who always made things worse. But Margaret's words from last night stuck with him. The question is, what are you going to do now? He grabbed his jacket and headed downstairs, pausing when he saw his parents in the kitchen. "Morning," he mumbled, grabbing a piece of cornbread from the counter. "Morning," Margaret said, her voice soft. "You going somewhere?" Tom nodded, avoiding her eyes. "Gonna try to find Michael again. I can't just sit here." Harold gave him a long look. "Be careful, son. He's hurting, and he might not be ready to see you. But I'm proud of you for trying." Tom's throat tightened. His dad didn't say stuff like that often, and it hit him hard. "Thanks, Dad," he said, then slipped out the back door before he got too emotional. In Columbus, James pulled into his driveway just as the sun peaked over the horizon. The house was quiet, the curtains drawn. He sat in his car for a long time, staring at the front door. He'd driven all night, rehearsing what to say to Lisa, but now that he was here, the words felt useless. How do you apologize for breaking someone's trust? How do you face the person you've hurt the most? He finally got out, his legs shaky, and let himself in. The living room was a mess, kids' toys scattered, a pile of laundry on the couch. Lisa was in the kitchen, sipping tea, her face pale and drawn. She looked up when he walked in, and her expression hardened. "You're back," she said, her voice flat. "Didn't think you'd show your face." James set his keys on the counter, his heart pounding. "Lisa, I needed to see you. To talk in person." She crossed her arms, her eyes cold. "You said enough on the phone. You cheated on me. With Emily. What else is there to talk about?" James took a step closer, but she held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't," she said. "Don't come near me. I can't even look at you right now." He nodded, staying where he was. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke us. But I want to try to fix it, Lisa. For you, for the kids." Lisa laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Fix it? You think you could just waltz in here and make this okay? I've been up all night, James. Wondering how long you've been lying to me. Wondering what else I don't know. Do you even love me anymore?" James's chest ached. "I care about you, Lisa. You're the mother of my kids. But I don't know if it's love anymore. Not the way it used to be." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, he thought she'd cry. But she straightened, her voice steady. "At least you're honest about that. But you don't get to decide what happens next. I need time, James, and I need you to leave." "Leave?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Lisa, this is our home." "Not right now, it's not," she said. "I can't be in the same house as you. Not after this. Go stay with your parents, or a hotel, I don't care. Just go." James wanted to argue, to beg, but the look in her eyes stopped him. He'd already taken so much from her. He nodded, grabbing his keys. "I'll go," he said, "but I'm not giving up on us. I'll do whatever it takes." Lisa didn't respond. She turned away, staring out the window, and James left, the door clicking shut behind him. The sound felt final, like a chapter closing. In Dayton, Emily woke up on the couch, her neck stiff from sleeping at an odd angle. The house was too quiet without Michael. She checked her phone, still no reply to her text. She didn't expect one, but the silence hurt all the same. She dragged herself to the kitchen, making coffee on autopilot, her mind replaying the fight in the truck. She'd meant every word she'd said to Michael. She wanted to fix their marriage, to earn back his trust. But the more she thought about it, the harder it seemed. Trust wasn't something you could glue back together like a broken plate. It was fragile, and she'd shattered it. She pulled out her laptop and opened her email, hoping work might distract her. But instead, she found herself scrolling through old messages from James. They'd started innocently, discussing a client's project, sharing ideas for a home renovation. Then came the personal stuff, a joke about a bad day, a compliment on her designs, a question about her life. She felt seen, valued, in a way she hadn't in years. That's how it started. That's how she'd lost herself. She deleted the emails, one by one, her hands shaking. It wasn't enough to erase what she'd done, but it was a start. She closed the laptop and grabbed her phone, typing a new text to Michael. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to fight for us. I'm starting therapy this week. I want to be better for you and for me. She hit send, then set the phone down, her heart racing. Back at the Carter house, Tom was on the road, driving toward Dayton. He didn't know if Michael was at home or still at the motel, but he had to try. The hour-long drive gave him too much time to think about the family, about his role in the mess, about how he'd always been the one who didn't quite fit in. James was the successful lawyer. Michael was the dependable cousin. And Tom? He was the kid who barely graduated college, still figuring out what he wanted to be. But maybe this was his chance to step up, to be more than the screw-up. He turned up the radio, letting the music drown out his doubts, and focused on the road ahead. When he pulled into Michael's neighborhood, he saw the truck in the driveway. His stomach flipped, but he parked and got out. Walking to the door, he knocked, waiting, his breath visible in the cold morning air. After a long moment, Michael opened the door, his eyes bloodshot, his hair a mess. What do you want, Tom? Michael asked, his voice flat. Tom swallowed hard. I came to say I'm sorry. I didn't know about James and Emily. I swear I thought it was just coffee. I never meant to hurt you. Michael leaned against the doorframe, his expression unreadable. I know you didn't mean it, but you still did it. You put my life out there for everyone to see. Tom nodded, his voice earnest. I know. I was an idiot. But you're my family, Michael. I can't lose you over this. Tell me what I can do to make it right. Michael looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. I don't know, Tom. I'm not ready to talk. Not to you. Not to anyone. I just need time. Tom's heart sank, but he nodded. Okay, I'll give you time. But I'm here, man. Whenever you're ready. Michael gave a small nod, then closed the door. Tom stood there, feeling like he'd failed again, but he didn't leave right away. He sat in his car, watching the house, hoping Michael might change his mind. Back at the Carter house, Margaret and Harold were cleaning up, preparing for the day ahead. They knew the family was still fractured, but they also knew they couldn't give up. Margaret looked at Harold, her voice quiet. We're going to have to be strong for them, aren't we? Harold nodded, pulling her close. Always have been, Maggie. Always will be. As the sun rose higher, the Carters faced a new day, each carrying their own scars. They were far from healed, but they were moving forward, one painful step at a time. The Carter house felt different in the days after Thanksgiving, like it was holding its breath. The leftover turkey and pies were packed away, the decorations taken down. But the weight of what happened lingered. Margaret and Harold went through their routines, coffee in the morning, chores in the afternoon. But their conversations were quieter, their smiles forced. They were trying to keep the family together, but it was like patching a sinking ship with duct tape. Margaret stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes from breakfast. The window looked out on the backyard, where the kids used to play. She could almost see James and Tom as boys, chasing each other with water guns, laughing like nothing could hurt them. Now, Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life. Harold came in, carrying a stack of mail. "Anything from James?" Margaret asked, not looking up. Harold shook his head, sorting through the envelopes. "Not yet. He texted last night, said he's staying at a hotel in Columbus, trying to give Lisa space." Margaret's hands stilled in the soapy water. Space. That's what everyone keeps saying. Michael needs space. Lisa needs space. But what about us, Harold? What about this family? Harold set the mail down and put a hand on her shoulder. "We're still here, Maggie. We'll keep holding on until they're ready to come back." She nodded, but her eyes were wet. "I just want to fix it. I want my boys to be okay. They will be," Harold said, his voice steady. "It's going to take time, but they're strong. Like their mom." Margaret gave a small laugh, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "You always know what to say." "Not always," Harold said, kissing her forehead. "But I try." In Columbus, James was holed up in a budget hotel near the highway. The room was small, with thin walls and a lumpy mattress. But he barely noticed. He spent most of his time pacing, replaying his last conversation with Lisa. Her coldness, her anger, it cut deeper than he'd expected. He'd known she'd be hurt, but he hadn't realized how much he still needed her, even after everything. He sat on the bed, his laptop open to an email he'd been drafting for hours. It was to Lisa, a longer version of what he'd tried to say in person. He typed, deleted, typed again, struggling to find the right words. "I know I've broken your trust, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know I'm not running away. I'm going to therapy starting this week. I want to understand why I did this and how to be better for you, for the kids, for myself. I love you, even if I haven't shown it. I'll wait as long as you need." He read it over, his throat tight. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He hit send, then closed the laptop, hoping it might reach her, even if she wasn't ready to respond. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter, Sophie, who was 8. "Dad, when are you coming home?" "Mon message." The words hit like a punch. He typed back soon. "Sweetie, I'm working on some things. Tell Mom I love her, okay?" He didn't know if Sophie would pass the message along, but he had to try. He thought about his kids, Sophie and her little brother, Ethan, who was 5. They didn't know the details, but they could sense the tension. Kids always did. James hated that he'd put them in the middle of this. He made a mental note to call a therapist tomorrow, not just for himself, but to figure out how to talk to his kids without breaking their hearts. In Dayton, Emily was at her first therapy session, sitting in a cozy office with a woman named Dr. Carter. No relation, thankfully. The therapist was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a notepad she rarely looked at. Emily fidgeted with her scarf, feeling exposed under the soft lighting. "So Dr. Carter said," leaning forward, "what brings you here?" Emily took a deep breath, then let it all spill out. The affair, the Thanksgiving disaster, Michael's pain, her guilt. She talked about how lonely she'd felt in her marriage, how James had filled a void she hadn't even named. "I know I messed up," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to fix it. I want to save my marriage, if Michael will let me." Dr. Carter nodded, jotting a note. "That's a good place to start. But let's talk about you, Emily. Why do you think you turned to James instead of addressing things with Michael?" Emily hesitated, picking at a loose thread on her scarf. "I don't know. I tried talking to Michael, but he was always so busy. Work, projects, travel. I felt like I was bothering him. James, he was there. He listened." Dr. Carter tilted her head. "And that felt good, being heard." "Yeah," Emily said, her eyes welling up. "It felt like I mattered again." They talked for an hour, digging into Emily's feelings of loneliness, her fear of being invisible. Dr. Carter gave her homework. Write a letter to Michael, not to send, but to clarify her own emotions. "You can't rebuild trust with him until you understand yourself," she said. Emily left the session feeling raw but hopeful. She stopped at a coffee shop, pulling out her notebook to start the letter. "Dear Michael, I've spent so long feeling like I was disappearing, and I blamed you for that. But I see now that I didn't fight for us the way I should have. I chose the easy way out, and I hurt you. I'm sorry, and I'm working to be someone you can trust again." She stopped, tears blurring the ink. It was a start. Tom was back in Dayton, sitting in his car outside Michael's house. He'd driven back after breakfast, determined to try again. Michael's truck was in the driveway, but the curtains were drawn. Tom took a deep breath and walked to the door, knocking softly. This time, Michael answered faster, his face still tired but less hostile. "You're persistent," he said, leaning against the doorframe. Tom gave a small smile. "Yeah, well, I'm stubborn like that. Can we talk? Just for a minute?" Michael sighed, stepping aside. "Fine, come in." The living room was a mess. Empty beer cans on the coffee table, a blanket crumpled on the couch. Michael sat down, motioning for Tom to do the same. "So, what's this about?" he asked. Tom took a deep breath. "I am sorry, Michael. Not just for saying what I did, but for putting you in that spot. I didn't know about the affair, I swear. If I had, I would have talked to you first, not blurted it out like an idiot." Michael looked at him, his expression softening just a bit. "I know you didn't mean it, Tom, but it still happened. And now my life's a wreck." Tom nodded, his voice earnest. "I get that, and I can't undo it. But I want to be here for you, man. You're like a brother to me. Tell me what you need." Michael leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "I don't even know what I need. Emily's texting me, saying she's going to therapy, that she wants to fix things. But every time I think about her with James, I feel sick. I don't know if I can get past it." Tom listened, letting Michael talk. He didn't have answers, but he could be there, and that felt like something. After a while, Michael stood, grabbing 2 beers from the fridge. "You want one?" he asked. Tom grinned, taking the can. "Yeah, thanks." They sat in silence, sipping their beers, the tension easing just a fraction. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step. Back at the Carter house, Margaret was in the living room, sorting through old photos. She found one of the whole family at a 4th of July picnic years ago. James and Lisa laughing, Michael and Emily holding hands, Tom chasing the kids with a sparkler. She traced their faces, her heart aching. They'd been so happy then, or so she'd thought. Harold walked in, sitting beside her. "You're going to drive yourself crazy looking at those," he said gently. "I know," Margaret said, setting the photo down. "But it reminds me what we're fighting for. We can't give up, Harold. Not on James, not on Michael, not on any of them." Harold nodded, pulling her close. "We won't. We'll keep the door open, no matter how long it takes." As the day wore on, the Carters kept moving forward, each in their own way. James was reaching out to Lisa. Emily was confronting her mistakes. Tom was rebuilding his bond with Michael, and Margaret and Harold were holding the family together. The road was long, and the scars were deep, but they were starting to believe they could heal. A week had passed since the disastrous Thanksgiving, and the Carter house was starting to feel like a home again, though the cracks were still there. Margaret was in the kitchen, baking cookies for grandkids, the smell of vanilla and sugar filling the air. It was her way of keeping busy, of holding on to normalcy. Harold was outside, raking leaves in the crisp December air, his breath puffing. In clouds, they didn't talk much about the fight anymore, but it hung over them like a shadow. Margaret's phone buzzed on the counter, a text from James. "Can I come by this weekend? Want to talk to you and Dad." She stared at it, her heart lifting but guarded. She typed back, of course. "We're her. E." She set the phone down, hoping this was a sign he was trying to make things right. Upstairs, Tom was packing a bag. He decided to stay in Ohio for a while, crashing at his parents' place while he figured out his next move. His talk with Michael and Dayton had given him a spark of purpose. He wasn't ready to go back to his aimless life in Cleveland, bouncing between dead-end jobs. He wanted to be there for his family, to prove he could be more than the screw-up kid. He checked his phone, hoping for a message from Michael. There was one, short but better than nothing. "Thanks for coming by. I'm not ready to hang out, but I'll call soon." Tom smiled, pocketing the 1. It wasn't much, but it was progress. He grabbed his bag and headed downstairs, calling out, "Mom, I'm heading to the store. Need anything?" Margaret poked her head out of the kitchen. "Pick up some milk, would you? And maybe some chocolate chips. I'm running low." "Got it," Tom said, grinning. He felt lighter than he had in days, like he was finally doing something right. In Columbus, James sat in a therapist's office, a small room with a couch that was too soft and walls covered in abstract art. His therapist, Dr. Ellis, was a middle-aged man with a calm voice and a knack for asking hard questions. James shifted uncomfortably, his hands clasped in his lap. "So," Dr. Ellis said, leaning back in his chair, "you told Lisa about the affair. How's that sitting with you?" James exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Like I swallow glass. She's barely talking to me. She let me see the kids yesterday, but it was cold. Sophie asked why I'm not living at home, and I didn't know what to say." Dr. Ellis nodded, jotting a note. "That's tough. Kids pick up on tension, even if they don't understand it." "What did you tell her?" "I said I was staying somewhere else for work," James said, his voice heavy. "I know it's a lie, but I couldn't tell her the truth. She's only 8. Dr. Ellis tilted his head. "Lying might feel easier now, but it could hurt more later. Have you thought about how to be honest with your kids in a way they can handle?" James shook his head. "I don't even know where to start. I'm trying to fix things with Lisa, but she shut me out. I sent her an email, pour my heart out, but she hasn't responded." Dr. Ellis leaned forward. "Let's talk about that. Why do you want to fix things with Lisa? Is it love, or is it guilt?" The question hit James like a brick. He thought about Lisa, the way she used to laugh at his bad jokes, the way she'd stay up late helping Sophie with homework. But he also thought about the last few years, the fights, the silence, the way they'd become strangers. "I don't know," he admitted. "I think I love her, but it's buried under all this stuff. Guilt, yeah, but also the kids. I don't want them growing up in a broken home." Dr. Ellis nodded. "That's a start. But rebuilding a marriage takes 2 people. You can't do it alone. And you need to be honest with yourself about what you want, not just what you think you should want." James left the session feeling raw but clearer. He drove to a park near his hotel, sitting on a bench to watch families play in the snow. He thought about Sophie and Ethan, about Lisa, about the life they'd built. He wasn't sure if he could save it, but he knew he had to try. In Dayton, Emily was at her second therapy session, her notebook open to the letter she'd written for Michael. Dr. Carter read it silently, then handed it back. "This is powerful," she said. "You're being honest about your feelings, your mistakes. Have you thought about sharing it with Michael?" Emily shook her head, her fingers tracing the notebook's edge. "Not yet. He's still so angry. I texted him about starting therapy, but he didn't reply. I don't want to push him." Dr. Carter nodded. "That's wise. He needs time to process. But this letter shows you're doing the work on yourself. That's important, whether or not you and Michael reconcile." Emily's eyes welled up. "I want to believe we can fix this, but what if he's done? What if I've lost him for good?" Dr. Carter's voice was gentle but firm. "You can't control his feelings, Emily. You can only control your actions. Keep showing up, keep growing. If he's open to it, you'll have a foundation to rebuild. If not, you'll still be stronger for it." Emily nodded, clutching the notebook. She left the session and drove to a bookstore, picking up a journal to keep tracking her thoughts. She also bought a book on rebuilding trust in relationships. It might give her ideas. At home, she started a new entry in the journal. "I'm scared of losing Michael, but I'm more scared of losing myself again. I want to be someone I'm proud of, no matter WH." It happens. Tom was back at the Carter house, unloading groceries when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Got your messages. I'm okay, just need space. Thanks for checking in." Tom's heart lifted. It wasn't a long talk over beers, but it was something. He texted back, "Anytime, man. I'm here." He put the milk in the fridge, feeling a little less like the family screw-up. Margaret noticed his smile. "Good news?" she asked, sliding a tray of cookies into the oven. "Sort of," Tom said, grabbing a cookie from the cooling rack. Michael texted, "He's not ready to talk, but he's not shutting me out completely." Margaret's face softened. "That's a start. I'm proud of you, Tom. You're stepping up." Tom shrugged, but her words warmed him, just trying not to make things worse. Harold walked in, his boots dusted with snow. "Tom, you gonna stand there eating all my cookies? Or you gonna help me shovel the driveway?" Tom grinned, grabbing another cookie. "I'm coming, Dad. Keep your shirt on." As he headed outside, he thought about Michael, James, and the family. They were all hurting, but they were trying. Maybe that was enough for now. At the Carter house, Margaret and Harold sat down for dinner, just the two of them. The table felt too big without the family, but they made do with leftover casserole and a quiet conversation. James is coming by this weekend, Margaret said, passing the salad. Says he wants to talk. Harold nodded, chewing thoughtfully. Good. He needs to face us, not just Lisa. Well, listen, but he's got to own this. Margaret sighed, her fork pausing. I know. I just hope he's ready to do the work. For his kids, if nothing else. They ate in silence for a while, the weight of the past week settling between them. But there was hope, too. A fragile, stubborn thing. They'd keep the door open, keep fighting for their family, no matter how long it took. Winter had settled over Ohio, blanketing the Carter house in a thin layer of snow. Inside, the kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls Margaret had baked for James's visit. It was the weekend after Thanksgiving, and the family was still picking up the pieces, but there was a cautious hope in the air. Margaret set the table for four, her, Harold, James, and Tom, hoping the simple act of sitting together could start to mend what was broken. Harold was in the living room, stoking the fireplace. The crackle of the logs was comforting, a reminder of countless winters spent together as a family. He glanced at a framed photo on the mantel, James, Tom, and their cousins at a long-ago Christmas, all grins and ugly sweaters. He wondered if they'd ever get back to that kind of joy, but he pushed the thought aside. They weren't there yet, but they were trying. Tom bounded downstairs, his hair still damp from a shower. Smells good, Mom, he called, grabbing a cinnamon roll before Margaret could swat his hand. James here yet? Not yet, Margaret said, arranging the rolls on a platter. He texted, said he's on his way. You sticking around for this? Tom nodded, swallowing a bite. Yeah, I owe him a talk, too. I've been dodging him since, you know. Margaret gave him a small smile. You're doing the right thing. Tom, facing things head on. I'm proud of you. Tom shrugged, but her words warmed him. He was starting to see himself differently, not just as the family screw up, but as someone who could show up when it mattered. The doorbell rang, and Harold opened it to find James, bundled in a coat, his face tired but determined. Hey, Dad, he said, stepping inside. Thanks for having me. Harold clapped him on the shoulder, his grip firm. Always, son. Come on in. James hung his coat, his eyes scanning the familiar house. It felt both comforting and strange, like returning to a place you'd outgrown. He followed Harold to the kitchen, where Margaret hugged him tightly, her eyes glistening. Good to see you, she said, her voice thick. You too, Mom, James said, hugging her back. He nodded at Tom, who gave a small wave. Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom said, his tone cautious but not cold. They hadn't talked much since Thanksgiving, and the air between them was heavy. They sat down, the table a small island of warmth in the winter chill. Margaret poured coffee, and, for a moment, they just ate, the clink of forks and mugs filling the silence. Then James cleared his throat, setting his mug down. I owe you all an apology, he said, his voice steady but raw. What I did, with Emily, with Lisa, with the family, was wrong. I hurt everyone, and I'm sorry. I've started therapy, and I'm trying to figure out why I let things get so bad. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm working on it. Margaret reached for his hand, her eyes soft. We're hurt, James, but you're our son. We love you. We just want you to be the man we know you can be. Harold nodded, his voice gruff. You've got a long road ahead, but you're taking the first steps. That's what matters. What's going on with Lisa? James exhaled, his shoulders sagging. She's still not talking much. She let me see the kids a couple times, but it's tense. I sent her an email, told her I'm in therapy, that I want to fix things. She hasn't responded, but I'm not giving up. Tom leaned forward, his voice quiet. I'm sorry too, James, for spilling everything at dinner. I didn't know it was that serious. I should have kept my mouth shut. James shook his head. It's not your fault, Tom. You didn't make me do what I did. I'm glad it's out in a way. It's forcing me to face myself. Tom nodded, a weight lifting. Still, I feel like crap. I'm trying to make it right with Michael, too. How's he doing? James asked, his voice hesitant. Not great, Tom admitted. He's talking to me a little, but he's still messed up. Emily's in therapy. Says she wants to fix things with him. I don't know if he's open to it. James looked down, guilt etched on his face. I need to talk to him. Apologize. I don't know if he'll listen, but I owe him that. Harold's voice was firm. You do, but give him time. He's carrying a lot. They talked for a while longer, the conversation slow but honest. It wasn't a full repair, but it was a start, a bridge built over the chasm that had opened at Thanksgiving. In Columbus, Lisa was at home, the kids playing in the living room. She sat at the kitchen table, James's email open on her laptop. She'd read it a dozen times, each word a mix of pain and hope. He sounded different, humbled, raw, but she wasn't sure if she could trust it. Trust him. Sophie wandered in, holding a drawing of a house with 4 stick figures. Mom, is Dad coming home soon? She asked, her voice small. Lisa's heart ached. I don't know, sweetie. He's working on some things. But he loves you and Ethan, okay? Sophie nodded, but her eyes were sad. She hugged Lisa, then ran back to play. Lisa looked at the email again, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She started typing a reply. James, I don't know if I can forgive you. What you did broke me, but I see you're trying. And that means something. I'm not ready to talk, but I'm not closing the door. For the kids, we need to figure this out. She hit send, her hands trembling. It wasn't much, but it was a step. In Dayton, Michael was at a coffee shop, meeting his sister, Laura, for the first time since Thanksgiving. She hugged him tightly, her eyes searching his face. You look like hell, she said, half teasing. Thanks, Michael said, managing a small smile. They ordered coffee and sat by the window, the bustle of the shop a contrast to the quiet between them. How you holding up? Laura asked, stirring her latte. Michael shrugged, his voice low. Not great. Emily's texting, saying she's in therapy, wants to work things out. I don't know what to do with that. Laura nodded, her voice gentle. Do you still love her? Michael stared at his coffee, his jaw tight. I don't know. I do. But every time I think about her with James, it's like a knife. I don't know if I can get past it. Laura reached for his hand. You don't have to decide now. You're allowed to be angry, to need time. But if there's any part of you that wants to try, maybe give her a chance to show she's serious. Michael sighed, rubbing his eyes. Maybe. I'm just tired. Of all of it. I know, Laura said. But you're not alone. You got me, Tom, the family. We're here. Michael nodded, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. Thanks, Laura. Means a lot. They talked for an hour, and when they parted, Michael felt a little lighter. He checked his phone, seeing Emily's latest text about therapy. He didn't reply, but he didn't delete it either. It was a small thing, but it was something. Back at the Carter house, the day wound down. James stayed for dinner, a simple meal of soup and bread. The conversation was easier now, touching on lighter things. Tom's job hunt, Margaret's garden plans, Harold's fishing trip. It wasn't the same as before, but it was enough. As James left, hugging his parents and fist-bumping Tom, he felt a cautious hope. He wasn't forgiven, not yet, but he was still part of the family. That was worth fighting for. Tom stayed up late, texting Michael, talked to James today. He's sorry, man. Want to make things right. No pressure, just thought you should know. He didn't expect a reply, but he felt better for saying it. Margaret and Harold sat by the fire, the house quiet around them. Think we'll be okay? Margaret asked, her voice soft. Harold pulled her close, his voice steady. We will. We're Carters. We don't give up. The snow fell outside, soft and silent, covering the world in white. The Carter family was scarred, but they were healing one step at a time. James was facing his mistakes. Lisa was opening the door crack. Michael was grappling with his pain, and Tom was finding his place. They weren't whole. Not yet, but they were together, and that was enough to carry them forward.